Hi everyone, grace, peace, and blessings. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. Our topic is wellness in a crisis, part 1. I will probably be doing part 2 next week, so watch out for that video. But I just wanted to say here that what we are experiencing right now is something that we have never experienced in our lifetime, something that happens maybe once a century. So we are definitely in a unique time. We are officially in a shift. We are officially in a change. Our lives have changed as we know it. And we are basically trying to function and trying to live our lives and basically trying to survive in a crisis. There are people out there who probably mean well, I'm sure they do. And they're sort of like treating it as if we should take the time to be productive and to work on things. And that is a good idea. But the reality is that this is a crisis. And it's hard to be productive when you have lost a loved one. And especially losing a loved one during this time where logistically you can't really get together and it's hard to bring things together. You can't bury your loved one like how you want to because of this social distancing. And you can't comfort one another like you want to because of this social distancing. So that's unique. It's hard to be productive when you know people who have the coronavirus, or you might have the coronavirus, or you're sick, or you're dealing with some other underlying condition, and you're also dealing with the threat of possibly catching the coronavirus. That's stressful. It's hard to be productive when you have lost your job, when you have lost wages, when you have lost hours, when you don't know when or if you're going to get paid. It's hard to be productive when you're losing money, and you're losing money out of your retirement, and the job that you do now have is shaky. Or if you're fortunate to still be working, you're working overtime, triple time if you're an essential worker, and then you're concerned whether or not you're going to bring the virus to your home or you yourself get sick. It's hard to be productive in those circumstances. It's hard to be productive when everyone's hunkered down in your home and you're stressed out and there's no peace in your household, no quiet in your household. It's hard to be productive when you've had to cancel important and significant life events and plans that you had for this year or for the weeks or the months ahead. So it's hard to be productive when it's uncertain, when we don't know how it's going to look 3 months, 4 months down the road. So it's hard to be productive in those circumstances. So what I want to tell you in this crisis is that it's okay if you don't want to be productive. It's okay if you have permission to cry and to be sad and to be upset and to be angry about this, because we all are. And what I want to say to you and encourage you is that it's very important that we give ourselves the time to process what's happening here. So all of those people who are saying, well, be productive and do this and do that and, get a plan. If you're not there because you're depressed or you're dealing with anxiety because of all of the stress that's happening now, it's fine. It's okay. I just want to tell you that in this video. It's fine and that it's okay. So what you're feeling now, I just want to say what you're feeling now, all of these things is legitimate. And it's normal for people who are going through a crisis. And actually, what's happening now is pretty traumatic. And this should be recognized. So in this video, I want to kind of like lay the groundwork to what we need to do to be well in this type of stressful environment, to be well in a crisis. Now, there's 3 fundamental things that we need to have in order to be well during a crisis. The first thing, and this is a very important thing, is acceptance and acknowledgement. It's very, very important that we are grounded in reality. See, we can't activate our faith. We can't activate our trust in God if we're not real with God. So if you're depressed, if you're suicidal, if you don't know what to do, if you don't know how you're going to provide for your family, you got to be real in those feelings. We have to acknowledge what's happening here, and that acknowledge the fact that our lives have been disrupted all around the world. This is temporary. It's not going to stay like this, but for now, this is the reality. And when we accept our current reality, then we'll be better able to move on. But for those people who do not accept or acknowledge, the gravity of what's happening here and the seriousness of this situation, they are going to suffer. The people who continue to go out during quarantine, the people who do not shut down their businesses or their churches, the people who are just arrogant and business people telling workers to go back to work in this environment, that's failure to acknowledge what's happening here. And then there's people, sorry to say, religious people who are not really acknowledging the situation, and some of them are going to suffer as well, and not being real with themselves or even being real with God. So the first step is acceptance. So accept the state that you're in right now, however you might be feeling. Some people might be doing okay, but there's those of us, many of us, who are not okay right now. And it's okay to acknowledge that. So in order for us to be well, we must acknowledge the state that we're in. So if you are battling and dealing with depression, if you're dealing with anxiety, if you're suicidal, if you've struggled with addiction and you think you might relapse, you have to be real in those feelings and acknowledge where you're at and acknowledge, okay, I'm stuck at home. Okay, this is my new reality and this is how it is for now. So that's the first step, is acceptance. Now, once we get through acceptance and acknowledgement, the next phase is adaptation. So we have to adapt. Any organism on this planet or in life that fails to adapt in this environment will not survive. So it's very important for us to, as we have acknowledged and accepted this reality, for us to begin to adapt to being shut in, to adapt to being quarantined. It's important for us to adapt mentally, spiritually, and psychologically so we can survive and so we can get through this trauma and this crisis. So once we adapt to our settings, once we adapt to our new normal, then we can be more on the road to wellness. So there's acceptance and there's adaptation. So we have to adapt to what's going on, because when we adapt, then we're able to better plan and figure out how we're going to move forward from now on. But if you don't adapt and you refuse to acknowledge what's happening here, you're going to have a hard time surviving mentally, physically, spiritually. So we have to adapt to our new surroundings, our new setting, being at home. And being away from some of the people that we love, being away from the activities and the things that we like to do, being away from work and school and from church and from family even. The next thing is, once we get from acceptance and to adaptation, the next phase is we'll be able to transcend what's happening. So once we grapple with reality and we adapt to the situation, then we can move beyond it. And then we can move into that phase of being productive. Then we can move into that phase of planning for the future. Then we can move into that phase of really laying down the spiritual foundation, where we can tap into our divine selves and get the strength, where we can get that strength from God. where we can get that inner strength. But if we do not accept and if we do not adapt, then we cannot transcend, right? So transcending meaning that although I live in New York, and I live in an area of the world that's hardest hit by the coronavirus, and every 20 minutes I'm hearing an emergency vehicle go by. Seriously, it's real in New York right now. Every 20 minutes I'm hearing an emergency vehicle. Psychologically, what that does to you, because I'm thinking about the people who are in there, not only the persons or the person that's sick, but the EMS workers that's dealing with these sick people, bringing them to the hospital and going back and forth. So that does something psychologically to you when you look out on the street and you're not seeing anyone, and when the city begins to sound like the suburbs because nobody's out there, which is a good thing. So going through all of this, I can begin to transcend because I've accepted, okay, I'm stuck here. I've accepted, okay, this is reality. I can tap into that inner power and say to myself, although this is happening now, this is a temporary situation. I could tap into my divine nature and spiritually and be able to say a prayer for that person that's in that emergency vehicle, and a prayer for the people that I know that's sick, or even for myself. So it's possible to transcend. It's possible to begin to be productive. It's possible to begin to raise up out of this crisis mentally and psychologically. But first you have to do the work. And first you have to accept. And first you have to adapt. And then you can survive and even thrive in a crisis. So those are the three fundamental things that we need to have, I believe, to start in survival mode as we go through this together, because we're not alone in this. I just want everybody to know that we're all in this together. Listen, I'm praying for each and every one of you. Take care and God bless. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.